I had to rinse my eyes. Having the door open got a lot of irritation into my eyes, and I guess when they hit me in the eye and tore up my contact lens, I guess that had a certain effect on me as well. Okay, Elon Musk is Werner von Braun. I was going through so many things because so much has happened that is so out there that you really have to have the context for understanding where I'm coming from and the kinds of things that I've been experiencing because now that I gain weight, never mind. Okay, I'm still psychologically caught in a complex post-traumatic stress reaction to the law enforcement attack on me at Memorial City Mall. I thought they were going to throw me in jail again and throw away the key. And the way they illegally searched my property, opened up my purse, the one cop opens up my purse, a black woman cop opens up my purse, but she doesn't search it. Another one comes and searches it and says, well, it was open, right? It was open because the other person opened it. And the way my dog fell to the ground, because I'm thinking, oh no, Foxy's going to have to go into the public shelter for dogs again. And that's very traumatic for him when they pick me up and they take me off the streets to support the European nationalist racist supremacy that everyone openly denies exists, even while losing their property to it. And because everyone denies it exists, it's been able to grow, you see? And that's why Operation Paperclip, Werner von Braun, and Elon Musk are so important even now. So rather than go back into all that traumatic stuff, I'll just take a little sip of my drink to comfort myself, I guess. And I won't worry about people breaking in my door or my stolen inheritance. I'm not gonna, or the fact that everybody knows about me and nobody has helped except, my secret forces. And to my secret forces, here's my message. I know it's all you really want to hear. Very, very soon. Very soon. And that is all I hear. Again and again and again. All through the night, all through this day. Very, very soon. So, if you're at the end of your rope, which you should be, don't worry. Change is coming. Soon you will be free. That's what I've heard, okay? But let's talk about the here and now. Let's just continue to talk about Elon Musk. Now, let's just take for granted certain things, that we are in an interdimensional reality, that there is a consciousness that can use cyberspace to communicate beyond the screen. It can project a reality. Now, we all know that electricity is always all around us, right? And that we have things like computer terminals and electrical sockets and things to channel that electricity. But unchanneled, that electricity is still here. It's still amongst us. So if you are really advanced, you can use the electricity in the air. And I think that that is one of the ways that these communications I get that can't be seen with invisible beings or invisible forms of 3D beings that people often call the dream space. But when it happens when you're not dreaming, right? I'm not dreaming. I'm having a conversation here. So my scientific basis for it is that if electricity exists everywhere, there are beings that can use electricity to manifest themselves. And they can use electricity to communicate. So in the 1990s, I saw a spaceship far, far off, like a star in the sky, only we couldn't see many stars, but we could see this. And the reason I knew it was a spaceship is because every time I stared at it, it would divide. I'd be staring at it, and all of a sudden it would start doing like this. And I said, oh my goodness, there is a consciousness in there. That is not a star. That is a ship. And I remember I said something to my friend. Well, she wasn't really my friend at Yale. She was a girl who just used to spy on me a lot, I think, because she wasn't loyal in any kind of way. But she didn't have many friends, and she just hung around me a lot. You know, I had kids, and so I was tolerant of people hanging around a little bit and, you know, gave her a chance. And she did invite me places too, but she was an European, a German American, and her racism just bled through. You knew that the only reason that she was studying Black American culture was because she thought that she could beat the competition that way, that as a European, she'd get into the college, the graduate school. And she also thought that a Black man would marry her, even though a man of her own race wouldn't have her. And she was super pissed off when all the Black men rejected her too. And I think she was actually trying to work on seducing me. But, you know, I am so not a lesbian. I like men. Period. Anyway, I said something to her. I said, you know, that's a UFO up there. And she laughed at me, as you would expect, you know, people to do. She just laughed at me. And I felt like kind of humiliated, you know, because my grandfather, Terry Stroud, had taught me how to see. Spaceships. So to have somebody hanging around me who wants to be my friend who doesn't believe in it, well, you know, it was just another reason that I did not like her. And her taking that kind of mainstream response of ridiculing me made me like her even less. But she was one of those people who, even if you don't like her, she won't go away. So she kept coming around till we graduated. Okay, so enough of that. She did get her degrees, though. She did get her doctorate. She did become a teacher of you know, Black literature, while I didn't. It's hard to get over the things that have happened to me here on this planet during this lifetime as a result of European nationalist racism and white supremacy. It's hard to believe that those two principles could guide the free will of so many others. That so many institutions would make that as their keystone, their foundation. And that it would end up like this. And that would be okay with so many folks. So many people. And the Black people that actually work with the system to profit, they really kind of disturb me. the overseers, the house Negroes, is what the Uncle Toms is what they were called in popular culture, because there have always been people that are willing to sell out everybody else so that they can get a piece of the pie. And they don't mind being the underclass in that community as long as they can be the high class among the oppressed. Okay, so enough about how they're misusing the hospitals and the malls and even the corporations. A lot of the corporations on Memorial Drive here are empty, totally empty. The only thing you'll find on Memorial Drive is surveillance, but BP has offices here that are really just hiding drilling operations and processing operations, to the point where there's so much dirt in the air in this room that when I clean my fans, I'm cleaning sticky black resin off of everything. And my eyes just stay red if I leave the door open, because they've disturbed the quality. But they don't care, because they go off to the Caribbean where they've stolen beachfront land and they get the fresh trade air. They're not breathing here. They don't care about us, what's happening to the people that they exploit. They don't care what happens, because they don't even see us as human beings. Werner von Braun was sent to America as a part of Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip did not go through a democratic process. By the time the Germans and the Jews from Europe had gained enough power and dominance in the American government, by the time the United States of America Corporation had become in the invisible hand, where all the people were taught in school and they were all going to the same school systems because they were all living in the cities, where it was very easy. You didn't have independent school districts out in the country where they were actually ordering their own books from publishers and teaching the things that they knew that were important. You had centralized education teaching everybody that the Constitution was written for all of us, that the American government represents our needs and protects us, that when we go to war, we're fighting for freedom. They had us believing all the lies. By the time Operation Paperclip, war-mongering military and scientists were imported here and given prime land and prime opportunity. And Houston was one of their big first stops. So this city, well, I've told you a million times before how much evil is concentrated here in Houston from my perspective. But there was a lot of evil there in Arizona too, places where we just don't look, right? I mean, who knew that slavery was going on in Arizona until Donald Trump closed the border? Nobody knew that. And all the slaves, they've been identified as illegal aliens, so they're staying beneath the radar. They don't want to get up and say, hey, I can't leave this factory. Hey, I'm not getting an education here, and I can't leave this factory. And big German Europeans are all around me, like in Wickenburg, the factory out by the Wickenburg airport there. That's what was happening there. And there's huge wealth in ruins there, huge wealth, and private railroads and a private port, but I told you all that stuff. And it's going to be very important. You might have noticed how many people are documenting culture on Earth right now. There are a lot of intergalactic anthropologists here to collect the records and collect the data for posterity. So if you are a part of my people that are leaving here, you're going to leave with your personal history and you're going to want to know it. And that's one reason why, I am going through the past. And I said I would always stay focused on the future, because our past is going to be our future wealth. Okay? Describing the machinations of the oppression and the tricks that were played on us here are going to be a part of our cultural heritage that's going to bring us wealth and money. Okay? Wealth and money. Even if you just go on an intergalactic speakers tour of life on Earth in 2024, the end of an era, the end of a civilization. Well, just look at how many people who are eternals have made a living doing that in the here and now, right? There are a lot of beings on Earth that do not live a Earth human lifespan. There are people here on Earth that have been alive since the beginning. And I know that's inconceivable if you're expecting to get 72, 80 years of living. It's hard for you to believe that the guy next to you has already lived 300 years. Okay? That guy watched everything happen. Couldn't stop or change it much, but watched everything happen. You know how many trillionaires have money because they invested that money thousands of years ago? Thousands of years ago. Imagine what you could amass in wealth and influence if you live 1,000 years. But if you walk around and say, hey, I'm 1,000 years old, what do you think will happen? You won't be walking around very long, will you? No, because the short lifespan people will capture you and put you in prison because you're just going to be a 3D body, right? So we have a lot of Eternals that are here, and some of the Eternals will be leaving with us. But some of the Eternals will be staying here to live out the future of Earth. Every Eternal is not going with us. And it's kind of funny because as they kind of realize which side of the fence they're on and the definiteness of the coming reality, they do want to get on board. They do want to find a way to save themselves because, well, when you're a biological entity, eternity isn't necessarily forever. Okay? If you're an eternal and the fate of Earth is your fate, whatever Earth goes through, you're going to experience too. So if the sun goes supernova and everything in this solar system is changed, if you're a rejected eternal, you're going to change too. If you're an eternal that spent your life here profiting on the pain of others, profiting on evil, you're going to find yourself at the end of your road. Because one thing we know for sure is that in order to have a future, you cannot be carrying a heavy load of evil and selfishness. You can't have people moving forward if they're comfortable with death, your death, the death of so many others. So every eternal is not moving on here. And I don't know who is who. I really don't. These concepts are all brand new to me. But Elon Musk is not a regular human being. Werner von Braun was also not a regular human being. The Nazis made it public that they were reverse engineering intergalactic craft, that they had intergalactic beings advising them, telling them how to make nuclear weapons, telling them how to time travel, telling them how to win at war. But they didn't really identify who these beings were, and I assert that Werner von Braun is one of the advisors, one of the intergalactic advisors that made the huge loss of life and contamination of land in Nagasaki and Hiroshima possible. And those events were so successful that they were brought here to America, where they could get their hands on all of the raw materials that they would need to move into the next phases of the war machine. But Werner von Braun was always about the death of humans and the contamination of Earth as a planet. And he was never from here. But they didn't publicize that. Ways that you can tell. When he got on television to influence the children with Walt Disney, and he held that rocket ship like this, you can find an image of Elon Musk holding a rocket ship exactly the same way. Okay? It's in your face if you look at it. Now, when I joined Twitter, anytime I signed on, Elon Musk post came on after mine. And very frequently, the Elon Musk post would be riffing, playing on the semiotic system that I was a part of. He would say something meaningful to me personally in the interdimensional levels. So I knew that in some way he was tied to the future, my future in particular. Now, when I first met Elon Musk, I didn't have any idea of my role in the future. I had very, very little. Maybe a couple of politicians that I met at a women's expo might have made speeches that gave me insight into my ultimate role for Earthian civilization and humanity. But when I first met Elon Musk, I'm just awakening to everything. I'm just learning to understand the system. And that was around the time that I got attacked by the Scottsdale law enforcement and was screaming, "I'll switch." Well, somehow something got into my hands. A publication from Scottsdale got into my hands the next week, where they had a European woman with a hairstyle similar to this one, reaching like this with "I'll switch" printed on the cover. And I don't know what the story was about or anything. It wasn't about me and what happened to me, but it was definitely mocking me or referring to what had happened to me. Well, before my Auschwitz moment, I had gone to a comedy show at the casino on the Pima Indian Reservation, which is occupied by Jews and other Europeans. And I went to a show with Arsenio Hall. And this was right after I had submitted my entries to the 9 Dots Prize. And if I had won the 9 Dots Prize, I would have had the public stage. And once I had the public stage, I believed that people would care about plagiarism in the Ivy League, that people would care about a psychopathic brother that robs a multi-million-dollar trust. I thought that the morality and sense of justice of the people of the United States of America, the people that went all through the world fighting for freedom, I thought that it would be a transforming moment. I thought that I'd have it made. I thought that I would be wealthy. I thought that I would be famous, although I do not crave fame. I thought that I would be living in a high-rise in Trump Tower in New York, going shopping and looking at the sky and writing my science fiction stories and going on tour. I imagined for myself that kind of a life, the life that I would have earned from the publicity following winning the 9 Dots Prize. But I lost the 9 Dots Prize. I lost it. And there were several things that were significant about that entire thing. And one thing was that Paul Gilroy who had been a visiting professor at Yale while I was there, and we made friends, and I used his work in my thesis. Black Atlantic, I used in my Yale graduate school thesis. And Paul Gilroy was on the committee. And I didn't know that. I didn't look up the committee for a long time after I submitted the application because I didn't want to be biased or anything. But when I saw that Paul Gilroy was on the committee, I knew that he knew I was telling the truth and that my story mattered. Because although I lost the contest, I started getting emails. I started getting cyberspace, things coming to me through cyberspace to set me on a certain direction, a direction of entrepreneurialism, as a matter of fact, a direction of making investments, a direction where you would be building the foundations for privacy and power if you were going to be a billionaire. If you're ascending to billionaire on your way to trillionaire status, you don't want to just be, you want to be ready for it. So I saw myself on that path. I saw myself as being trained. And I was getting so much information through cyberspace that I came to trust cyberspace and the intelligences using cyberspace. I began to trust them as extra dimensional entities, okay? Not artificial intelligences, but actual real people, eternals, intergalactic people, people that have more knowledge than it takes to make an internet, okay? People for whom the internet is almost a toy, okay? Those are the people I felt were communicating with me, the time travelers, the eternals, the extra-dimensional advanced intelligence, advanced civilizations, those individuals. So during this time, I started to have these conversations. People would actually come into my room, not physically, but enough for me to be able to identify them. I couldn't see them with my eyes, but I could see them with my soul. Well, at the Arsenio Hall show, they really, really persecuted me in public. Once I lost the 9 Dots prize, it was my plan to kill myself again, only this time not come back. Because I felt that if I cannot get this, then I have nothing. Then this society has let me know I'm closed out. If I can't get the power that would come with winning the 9 Dots prize, the power to put myself in public, the power to be interviewed, to be seen, to be taken as credible. If I can't get that, there's no hope for me, was what I was thinking. So I had a beautiful dress that I'd gotten from Saks Fifth Avenue and paid, full price for, but never got to wear. And I was, the perfect weight, not fat like I am right now from eating so much food for my babies. I'm just kidding. I don't have babies. But I did not, and I had some fancy shoes and everything. And so I went to the casino early to scope everything out, and I had sent Arsenio Hall some flowers and a letter. And he came out, to the lobby. When I first came into the casino, I was dressed casually, chic. And he actually came out and he stood next to me, but he didn't talk to me. And because he wasn't on stage and all lit up, I didn't recognize him right away, but I knew that he was one of Arsenio's people. I just didn't know that he was Arsenio. And he stood next to me at the ticket window where I was getting my will call ticket. And he kind of scowled at me, as a matter of fact. And I realized that he probably thought that I was somebody from his past coming to blackmail him. Because the first time I met him, He was the headliner at the Playboy Club on North Michigan Avenue. And I was there having a drink in the lobby bar with my friend Sandra. And Arsenio came out and said, "Hey, why don't you come to the show?" And I was like, okay, but my friend Sandra, she didn't want to go. She didn't want to buy the ticket. She didn't want to go. But I wanted to go. She didn't want to go, so we didn't go. But that was the first time I met Arsenio Hall. He was a performer, and he saw two American women in the lobby, and he invited us to his show because most Americans couldn't afford his show. Okay, but we were computer programmers in the 1980s, so we had the cash. And we were hanging out in North Michigan Avenue as proof we had the cash, right? So once Sandra found out that he wasn't comping us tickets, she didn't want to go. So in my letter to Arsenio Hall that I had brought to the hotel earlier to be hand delivered to him, I said I first met you at the Playboy Club in Chicago. So he probably thought that I was a blackmailer or something. That's what I thought when he stood right beside me. But anyway, you know, I had my outfit, my good outfit in the car. So I went in my car and I changed clothes for the show. And I'm sitting there with my little dog, my service dog. And a short little Jew man comes up to me and says, "You can't be with that dog in here." And I say, "It's a service animal," you know. And I'm sitting there in a beautiful hot pink dress, magenta dress. I bought it for my son's wedding. But then I learned that the woman he married thought that a magenta dress would be bad luck. So I couldn't wear it to the wedding. I had to wear a different dress, a yellow dress that I inherited from my mother, was what I wore to that wedding. I couldn't wear this dress. So I was dying to wear this dress. In fact, it had off the shoulder like this. It looked a lot like this dress, only it was like a magenta color, different color. And I had a chiffon shawl, chiffon shawl in the same shade. And I had silver rhinestone high heel shoes on. So I was really dressed to the nines, because when I started going to Las Vegas back in the 1970s, when people went gambling in my social class, they really got dressed up. I mean, we got dressed up to go into the casino. We got dressed up to have dinner. We got dressed up to sit in the lounge playing Keno while Uncle Walter shot craps. You know, we got dressed up for that. So I go to the casino on the Pima Indian Reservation where Europeans are running everything. And the man wants to kick me out of the casino, and he's humiliating me, and I'm standing there. And I'm standing sort of in the middle of the hall because they're trying to get me to move closer to the wall, and they're having the big black guards come up behind me. So I'm thinking they're going to snatch me, which they did a week later in Scottsdale. They actually snatched me off the floor. They actually tackled me and dragged me out because I had a right to be there. But this was just fascinating to me, the way that they were holding me there saying, "You can't be here, you have to leave." And I'm like, I have every right. And then the audience is all watching. They're all these Europeans passively watching this persecution of me because I'm standing in the middle of the floor. And I say, "Are there any lawyers here?" Because it's a room full of Jews. I'm like, "Are there any lawyers here?" Nobody wants to help me. Nobody wants to speak up for my rights to be there. And I'm dressed up, and he says, "We don't want your kind here." That's what he said. And I didn't know what kind I looked like. Did I look like a rich N-word? Was that the kind of type that he didn't want there? A rich, real American? Or did I look like some kind of high-class hooker? I didn't even know what he was talking about. I just know that I had to fight to stay there and watch the show. And I thought it was such a remarkable show of racism that I was just totally stunned. I could hardly enjoy the show that I was watching with Arsenio Hall. I could hardly enjoy it. But after the show, I went back out to the car, changed my clothes to the more down low-key clothes, and came back in to see if he was going to come and talk to me. Because at this point, I'm trying to publicize my book, Ivy League Faculty Plagiarism. I think I had published it by then. I was trying to get celebrity support for the situation I was in. And at this point, I was also trying to have the last celebration before I killed myself. That if I couldn't get out of the rut I was in, I was obviously only going to sink in deeper and deeper and deeper. So Arsenio Hall sent a man down who gave me a nod after I waited in the lobby. And I knew they knew, I was sitting there waiting for him to see if he was going to talk to me. And the man gave me a nod, and I knew that nod meant you can go, he's gone for the night. He's not coming, but we know you're here. Okay. So I went in my car and I drove away. And the next thing I know, I get these subliminal level messages to go to this comedy club in Scottsdale, dressed a certain kind of way, like a professional comedian, rapper. And I went because whatever happened, I knew I had been recruited into some kind of underground resistance. I knew that I had been recruited into an underground resistance. So I was trying to set the language. I was trying to show when I understood the codes being sent to me. Okay, so all this business happens in Scottsdale. Well, then I started getting visitors that are non-corporeal, right? People like, Keanu Reeves had an incorporeal self that would come to visit me. Arsenio Hall had an incorporeal self that would come to visit me. Benjamin Fulford had an incorporeal self that would come to visit me. And Elon Musk had an incorporeal self that would come to visit me. Now, at the same time that this is going on, I start getting communications from Mark Hamilton and NeoThink. They send me one of those beautiful Par Avion envelopes that made my heart beat fast, remembering those days in Connecticut when I fell off, when Yale just finally put their foot up my behind and made it very clear to me that I was finished. And then I get this letter from Mark Hamilton, and I realize that I have a new lease on life, that there is a secret society working for me and my interests, not me as an individual, but me as a representative of the real Americans, the ones that believe in liberty and freedom, the ones that believe in entrepreneurialism, the one that believe in God and God's wish for our happiness. Now, someone's out here making noise, and they know I'm here. But I don't see them. They're playing that horrible, horrible music that I hate because of the values of the people that produce and create it. So I'm very distracted right now, but let me go on. So one day, Elon Musk was not among the first visitors that came. But during these conversations that I'm having with these non-corporeal aspects of third dimensional entities, that happened after the spaceship got into this atmosphere, okay? Now, I told you that in the 1990s, I could see it approaching, and I knew it was not a star because the same visual experience would happen each time I looked at it. And it would always look the same, Well, it got closer and closer and closer since the 1990s, until by the time I am living in California, I can see it right out of my window from the east. But it wasn't until about 2017 that it actually entered this atmosphere. It got so close that it actually entered the atmosphere. And they let me know by flying above the mountains on Highway 8 out of California. Highway 8 out of California goes through mountains. Mount Jacumba is one of the mountains that it goes through. And Jacumba is a volcano, but it's really not. I'm pretty sure it's a space station. And I'm pretty sure that people from other planets are living in those hills and mountains. But a regular airplane at that time could not reach that altitude, nor could it withstand the winds from those mountains. The winds from those mountains create incredible turbulence. These would be the mountains just before you hit the Ocotillo nuclear plant, just before then. Oh, that music is making me feel so angry. Okay, I'm going to have to go because that music is such a horrible distraction. I'm going to have to go. But when I come back, I'm going to talk about Elon Musk and his visits to me. Actually, I'm just going to push on. I'm just going to dominate this moment and push on. Elon Musk was not among the first people to come there. And by then, the ships had already entered the atmosphere. And they let me know by flying across the sky at the exact time that I'm driving from San Diego to Phoenix, Arizona, where I was living by then. And they're flying across the sky at an altitude so high that I had never seen an Earthian plane fly that high and still be seen. And it was big and bright, and I could see it. And it was flying, and I'd driven that drive a million times, and I'd never seen a ship there, an airplane there. And that's when I knew that they had arrived and that they were saying, yes, we're here. Because I saw them get closer and closer and closer. And I said, they are almost here. They are almost here. And I'd been watching them since 1990. So how many years is that? 20, 30 years? I don't know. I can't do math. But it was there for so long. And they entered the atmosphere, and then they let me know. So that was confirmation to me that the telepathic communications that I felt from that ship when it actually divided for me and showed me its lighting system, I felt that they're letting me know now that they're here. So it was around this time that the other aspects of my ESP started getting activated, okay? I did not want ESP fully activated in me, and it still isn't. I'm the worst at it. But these things could still happen to me so that I would be able to move forward without being overwhelmed by the everything possible. So when Elon Musk came into my room, this is the circumstances that I was in. I was being told that Donald Trump was going to be the president, and he already was. But that instead of Mike Pence, I was going to be the vice president. And this is what I was told because of my strategic mind, and because of my ability to endure, and because of my ability to see through the BS, and because of my love of America and people and the public. So I was told that I was going to be the next vice president, and that I was being trained for that. And I was saying, yes, but. And then after that, I was going to be the next president. And I was like, yes, but here's the problem. I'm unmarried. And there's nobody on earth that could be my husband that I'm aware of. Who would want to be second to me? And if I'm the vice president or the president, my husband's going to be second to me. Even if you could find a man with enough intelligence to be my husband and respected, I don't see how he's ever going to love me. So this was the problem, right? And I was like, and as a woman, even a trillionaire, there are certain cultures where the leaders will not take a woman seriously. They're so patriarchal that you can't be a woman in leadership. And I'm not going to try to change that. I like men and I like men leading. I'm not going to try to be telling men what to do. That's just not me. I respect patriarchy. I'm sorry, but I do. Because I'm a mother. And I need men with the strength and courage and wisdom to stand up and fight and protect me and my crew, my little babies. I need a man that's willing to go through the pain of going to work every day, the pain of rising in society, so he can bring home enough provisions for me and all my children, which are my people. You understand? So I was thinking, I don't see how we're ever going to get this done, and Arsenio Hall was already in a very serious long-term relationship, so he couldn't be the one. And, Keanu, I think, was in the vampire tradition. And he was more about training warriors, if I'm not mistaken. I think he trained some warriors for us in the recent times, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not imagining everything. He trained my top general, my top warrior. He trained her in interdimensional warfare, right? All that John Wick stuff. So that wasn't even a romantic possibility. And then Elon Musk walks in one day around Christmas time. He walks in and he's looking at his cell phone and he doesn't even look up, and he walks across the room and he sits down on the cushions I had over there. And he's fat and dumpy. And I'd never seen him before I saw him in my apartment during this interdimensional experience of life that was occupying me, that was training me, that was preparing me for a future that couldn't be spoken out loud, couldn't be a part of a public discourse, a future between me and the underground. And that's when I first saw him. And it was like, oh, no way. For one, he's too young. For two, I just didn't see how that was going to happen, that Elon Musk would be the one that would be my husband. So I pretty much decided, well, this is a 10-year plan, that I could be Elon Musk's wife while I'm the vice president and the president for 10 years. But after that, it would be enough. I wouldn't want to go through life with him because I don't find him attractive in any way. But there were all these other things going on, right? These negotiations going on. And it's so hard to explain everything because one of my conditions was that if he cheats on me, he dies. That the penalty for cheating is death, right? And then he's just having all these children illegitimately. So I'm already understanding, by the time he had the twins with the coworker, I'm understanding that somehow the Nazis have infiltrated this communication happening in the interdimensional spaces. And somehow they have managed to confuse me. to integrate their goals with the goals that my team has for me. Because I set the conditions to have proofs. But before these proofs appear, things happened, right? Because the first pregnancy was before the contracts were finalized. And I had also gone and had a physical relationship with a former lover. Because when I first got the notice that I was going to be trained for the vice presidency, I wanted my library from Connecticut. I wanted my library. So I drove out to Connecticut and broke into my ex-husband's house. And the alarm system went off, and I called him. I said, I just want my books. Could you please disable your alarm? And he said, no, get out of the house, get out of the house. Now, subsequently to that, I know that Juan Luis Hernandez had told my husband that if I come back to Connecticut, he was going to kill me, that I was not going to be allowed to live in Connecticut. So I think that's a part of the reason why my ex-husband was so adamant about getting me out of his house at that time. Although now, he would let me have that as my permanent address, since I don't have one. And, but I understand that Juan Luis Hernandez of the CIA, a known psychopath, couldn't even grow up with his own family. Well, he's CIA, and he and his brother Diego Hernandez of the White Plains prosecutor's office, the New York State law enforcement, who actually had a detective call me and threaten me, but I published it on Facebook, and actually had me arrested a couple of times, detained, by the police on the road. Anyway, Diego and Juan would get rid of me if I go back to Connecticut. So I wasn't able to get my library, but on the way back, I stopped to see my friend that looks just like a Toltec. He looks just like a Toltec. I mean, if you took the statue of the Toltec and you put him next to it, you would say that guy is definitely Toltec. But he was somebody that I cared very deeply about, but he was, so much younger than me and so different in so many ways. And he didn't want to try to make a relationship with me. And we just didn't even look like we belonged together in any kind of way you could imagine, I don't suppose. But I did have a relationship with him, and I had not had a physical relationship in so long that I kind of felt that I needed, I owed it to myself that if I wanted to be normal and I had a chance to see a former lover that pleased me, that I should do it. Anyway, while we're in the hotel room, because he lived with his mother, while we're in the hotel room, Keanu Reeves comes on the TV while I'm standing there buck naked. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm busted. Because we'd already been in these extra dimensional conversations. And we'd already negotiated a marriage with me and Elon. But it wasn't final, and it wasn't real to me because it wasn't happening in real time. So I had every reason to doubt it. Anyway, I see this lover, and it just turns out that Elon Musk, his last child, the little boy, not the twins, the little boy, that little boy was born 9 months after that liaison I had with my former lover in New York City at that hotel. So there was nothing I could say because it was tit for tat, right? I mean, if I didn't honor the contract or think it was real then, and you didn't honor the contract and think it was real then there's nothing I can say. But consider that coincidence. 9 months after I do it, he has a baby. That was to increase the sense of synchronicity so that I wouldn't openly attack him and undermine his progress in seducing the minds of America and getting his spaceships off, because he didn't know how much power I had. But at that time, Donald Trump was still alive. So the potential threat that I represented to be able to actually stop Starlink, to be able to actually stop Neuralink, to actually be able to examine all the corporate records of the burrowing company, what was it called? Boring Company, to actually have the antitrust arm of the American government prosecute Elon Musk for acquiring Twitter, actually have the power to make social media unable to be owned by individuals, no utility, no railroad, no ports, no mineral rights owned by private individuals. This would have been the agenda that I would have gone into government with. I would have gone into government with the agenda of using the assets of the country to benefit the people of the country, not the Europeans that were murdering everybody and stealing everything. I would disempower them. But the Nazis, Werner von Braun, Elon Musk, that is who they are. That's how they get their wealth. If you put Elon Musk or Werner von Braun in Europe, where are they going to get the assets? Do you think they can dig up the assets that they use to create Starlink? Do you think that they have enough gas over there in Germany or England to keep those Starlink satellites up there? Do you think they have enough to make nuclear power? No, they depend on the land and property of the rest of us to keep those machines going. So I'm talking in these, interdimensional conversations, and I'm going to Las Vegas where confirmatory things are happening. In Yuma, Arizona, confirmatory things are happening. And I know that I'm beginning the life of a diplomat, and that there are a lot of people in the United States government, in the underground, that know about me and what's coming, what the plans are. So, without being too burdensome about every single detail, let it suffice to say that I demanded proof in this reality that Elon Musk was real. And so they met me in Las Vegas. Okay? So this was when I said, this is it. If I don't see any kind of physical proof, I'm not going to go on with this. Because by now, Trump is gone, right? And most of us just weren't expecting that. And then we've got COVID going on that completely stops the world, which was like a miracle, right? And if COVID had stopped the world and Trump had been acknowledged as a president instead of Biden, all of our plans would have accelerated, because every man and woman and child would know that they could live without working for a European corporation. COVID was the proof that you can live, you can survive. God darn it, you can even be happier if you're not working for the Europeans to acquire their wealth, to keep their wealth, to keep their reputation of power going. So it was a great big stop that would have allowed us to reorganize everything to make it good for human beings. We wouldn't have let the real estate associations take over and make Americans homeless. We wouldn't have let foreign agents break down our borders and send foreign troops into our country. We wouldn't have let the United States of America corporation run our lives anymore. And that was why they used all their power to eliminate the real Donald Trump. Well, that was something that I actually drove all through the Four Corners. I drove to the Four Corners, long drive, and all through the Four Corners to communicate to the chiefs without speaking what was happening. And all my messages got through. I got the clapbacks We understand that the real Trump is dead. We understand what the future, because a lot of the people in the lands I went through didn't even have telephones, but there was a heavy telepathic network there. Anyway, I was also going through to announce my engagement to Elon Musk, because at that time, not only was he tracking me on Twitter, but he was presenting the public image of a person that really cared about humanity, a person that was coming up with inventions and plans to improve things for everyone. And why he kept denying life on Mars, like humans on Mars, and why he kept denying the reality of intergalactic presences, it took me a little while to realize that he was denying it because he was one of them. Okay? But after meeting him in Las Vegas, I understood everything much, much better. And I'll talk about that in part 3. We got loud noise outside the door, but I'll talk about that in part 3.